The 9th season of Consider This is brought to you in part by From the Top, a national program showcasing the musical talents of young people. From the Top can be heard on KVNO Classical 90.7 each Sunday at 5 p.m.
Consider This, a program of issues and information behind today's news. Once again, from the campus of the University of Nebraska at Omaha, here is your host, Carol Schrader.
Hello and welcome back to UNO. We're starting to get ripples of concern in the state of Nebraska over convicted sexual offenders, where they should live, more precisely where they shouldn't live. And some cities across the country are trying to expand the areas where they can't live. Some whole cities are saying, you know, no, stay away. Well, Nebraska's a little worried they might come here. So if we restrict them from cities and towns or portions of cities and towns, does that mean everything's cool? We don't have to worry about our kids, our wives, our husbands even. Well, maybe we do need to worry a little. My guest this week is Pamela McCarthy. She is with the YWCA in Omaha, one of the leaders in the state in working to prevent and educate people about domestic violence. This is National Domestic Violence Awareness Month, and Pamela, welcome.
Well, thank you.
You've got an extensive background. Your degrees in psychology, your master's in criminal justice, and you spent about half a dozen years teaching on the university level about specializing in sort of sexual assault. Now you sort of take care of personing of the sexual assault hotline, and you do a lot of training. And did this occur to you when they started, being concerned about expanding the banned areas?
Yeah, there's several different issues to be concerned about. In terms of the work that I do, my primary concern is maybe the false sense of security that expanding the area that sexual offenders cannot go into would provide people in general. We kind of forget the dynamics of the crime itself, that it's often committed by someone that's known to the person, particularly with children. 60%, over 60% of sexual assaults that are perpetrated against children never come to the attention of adults.
And they're not necessarily by they can be, but they're not necessarily by that pedophile that we're so worried about out there, or that's on the list. And I'm not trying to minimize the concern that parents particularly have, but in my experience, and certainly in yours you have much better experience, friends, acquaintances, even live-in boyfriends, women friends, the neighbor that, you just have to, we don't want our kids to be on guard all the time and make them fearful, but the majority of these kinds of things go unreported in the first place, and therefore not convicted.
Right, exactly. So it never comes to the attention of authorities, so therefore would never be included on that list. And so a lot of the work that we do is not about instilling fear in our children, but empowering them, giving them some skills that makes them less vulnerable. Sexual abuse tends to be a crime of opportunity and vulnerability. Someone will look for an opportunity to take advantage of someone who they perceive as vulnerable. Opportunity arises when it's okay to be around a child, and that might be because they're living in their home, that may be because they're babysitting them, that may be a neighbor, that might be a teacher, that might be someone who has, there's some accessibility to the child. And if we give our children the knowledge that it's okay to say no to an adult that's asking them to do something that doesn't feel right to them, giving them some basic safety skills to keep themselves safe, a lot of kids will take that information and file it away along with other safety skills that they get. Like, for example, when we told them how to keep themselves safe from a fire, or helping to prevent smoking or drugs. They take that, a lot of kids will not necessarily start taking drugs or smoking, but they're not scared by that information, but they take it away and they file it away. So it's there for kids who
it's just part of their mental database.
Exactly.
And so just like you would teach them how to you do something else, or warn them just in general about crossing the street, that cars come, that would just heighten their awareness a little bit.
And that is the best thing we can do for our children, as opposed to again, I think giving this false sense of security. I mean, we are raised to be fearful of strangers. We raise our kids to not take things from strangers, don't talk to strangers, and that's all fine and good, and that's something that our kids should learn. But with sexual abuse, it tends to be a crime that's committed by someone that's known to the child, someone who has a relationship. It's a betrayal of trust. And a lot of sexual abusers do not use physical violence or physical force. They use more, they trick kids into thinking what they're asking them to do is okay. They may be manipulative. They may try to bribe the child, make the child feel like what they're asking them to do is acceptable. And then a lot of the times after the victimization, blame the child for what has occurred and threaten the child.
And that kind of goes back to the fact that you don't tend to blame the child when it's a known sex offender or when it's someone that was, an evil person out there lurking. And believe me, I'm not minimizing the concern over convicted pedophiles.
Right.
But there is a lot more to the dynamic of children being sexually assaulted, as I said, could be live-ins or whatever, because of your own. Well, let's take a scenario, and which is, become more common since I was young, is that there is a live-in boyfriend or girlfriend, and therefore there's the personal dynamic of the parent and the live-in, and the person's, and this can go for fathers or mothers too, but that personal self-esteem and all these kinds of things, and that we sometimes forget that the child has as much, or if not more, to lose in terms of their future. And so therefore, if it does happen, as you said, we tend to blame the child. Oh, you asked for it, because we can't be objective about someone we're emotionally attached to with our adult psyche.
Sure, and we tend to not believe our children and not listen to our children.
Especially if we don't want to hear.
If we don't want to hear what they're saying. And a lot of kids, again, very, very rarely would kids lie about a situation like this. Most kids who disclose this are very much telling the truth. A lot of kids choose to suffer in silence, much like adults. Rape is one of the most underreported crimes that we have. And adults find it difficult to come forward. Kids may find it even more difficult to come forward. And they're held as much in that silence as much as adults. So if they actually have the courage to come forward and actually tell somebody, and somebody that they're supposed to trust, whether that be a parent or a teacher, it's so important that person believes them. But unfortunately, sometimes that doesn't always happen.
We're concentrating right now on children, and we'll get to some other scenarios, but maybe I watch too much law enforcement movie shows, particularly like Law and Order Special Victims Unit, where there are, they have to make scenarios. They run out of them, so they have to make up some. But there's always the one where things have been put in the child's mind. And I know with special organizations like Project Harmony in Omaha, where a trained person can listen to the questions from outside a room as to what they should ask, someone that knows how to do this, and that law enforcement's needs and psychologists' needs and parents' needs, because they need to know, are met through one person. So children are not put through sort of hell. Yeah. But the point I'm trying to make is that, yes, there may be ideas put in children's heads, but by and large, trained people can sort that out if there's any question.
Most definitely. The most important thing, that if a child has come forward to you and disclosed, whether that be a teacher or a parent or a friend of the family, a neighbor, it's not that person's job to interrogate that child and try to figure out the validity of those what the child is telling you. It's to believe them, give them some support, and refer them to the people who are trained in the community to, again, sort this stuff out and get the child the help that the child needs.
I suppose, and fortunately this has not happened to my child or anyone I know, but we to just reaffirm that you are their protector, and that if something happened, you know, that it wasn't your fault. And if it did, and we're going to go to the people who, who will also help protect you.
Yes.
So that protection is emphasized, because if they have been violated, they probably feel that protection web that children take for granted has been violated too, which is almost as significant.
Most definitely. Again, this crime is very much a violation of trust. It's a violation of something that we take very sacred in terms of our control of our own bodies. And you then, in a child's mind, you also, if that's someone that they love or somebody they thought they could trust that does this, that's even another layer of betrayal and very hard for a child to sort through. And so it's very important for that child to have a trusted adult they can go to. And unfortunately, some kids may have to go to several adults before they get help. And one of the programs we take out into the schools talks about how you know, if you go to an adult and you tell them that this has happened and they don't believe you, you don't get help, you go to another adult. You keep telling until you're believed. And we talk about the feelings of if you're not believed, how that's going to make you feel, but how important it is for them to keep talking and keep until they find somebody. And for a lot of kids, there's a lot of support for them out there, a lot of adults in the community who want to protect them and keep them safe.
Okay, we've kind of dwelt on the children. I think we were talking more young children. We're sitting here on a campus with a bunch of, although UNO is a very cross section of ages, but you know, I look around at the young adults and I can remember back to my college days. Yes, crew, I can remember back to my college days, and how we felt powerful and strong and smart. And I know things happened to my friends before this sort of acquaintance rate became more open. Actually had a term anyway. And so there was a lot that went unreported.
Right.
And that can really affect, you know, that when you're in that age of really trying to mold your world.
Sure, sure. It's a very, you know, exciting time when you first go to college and you're out on your own and you're exploring the world, but also that makes you very vulnerable. And we know that sexual assault is a very prevalent crime on college campuses today, particularly for young women who are freshmen and sophomore in particular. They are seen as the most vulnerable. And then when you add in there alcohol, that increases their vulnerability. What we know is that there's individuals who will take advantage of a situation. They will look again for opportunity, and what they view as opportunity is someone they're going to perceive as more vulnerable. So if you have someone who's been drinking, they're seen as more vulnerable, and that person—
They are.
Yeah, they definitely
I mean, they're more
are.
vulnerable in many ways. In
Yes.
terms of just judgment in general. And
Yes.
And that's whether you're a college student.
Exactly. And that there are people out there who take advantage of that and then use that as an opportunity to offend against them sexually. And so when that happens to someone, they often will feel responsible for what's happened because they were drinking, or they may not be able to remember everything. And then we as a society tend to blame the victim as opposed to looking at the behavior of the perpetrator as much.
And then you enter things that have, I mean, these kinds of things just evolve with technology and science, the date rape drug and those kinds of things. And there still is a little bit of the mentality, there's a catch-22. A woman or a man, young woman or man, don't have to be very young, do need to, I guess, kind of watch what you do, just kind of don't do what you don't intend to happen. And I'm not doing the old don't ask for, but what I'm saying is we do have to be aware that we send out signals. That doesn't, so the other side of that is any signal that just comes out of just being, have a joie de vivre, and I remember, you know, a lot of gals that just loved life and everything, that was taken as a come on. So there's that catch-22, that tension between it, you know, and so women particularly, I think often feel, well, maybe I did. You know, I am kind of always bouncing around and having fun. You know, I love life, and maybe that it can be mistaken. And so we still don't know what that magic formula is or isn't, or what. Rape is never correct.
Right.
But you know, I mean, they tend to take a little guilt upon themselves.
It's very easy for someone to take the guilt on themselves because of that. And again, that's something that we support as a society. But it's also very important to understand that there are individuals, people who are rapists, they're going to victimize someone. Obviously, we need to be responsible for ourselves and always be aware of our surroundings and do what we can do to take care of ourselves. But at the same time, we're human. We make poor judgments sometimes, we make poor decisions, and sometimes we're in situations that we are at higher risk, and bad things can happen. We as a society need to really start to focus on giving those victims support, because again, they're blaming themselves enough. They need to get the message that, yeah, you know, they may have had a poor judgment, they may have been in a situation, we've all made poor judgments sometimes, but that never ever means we should ever be a victim of rape. And that we should also be looking at individuals who, again, who look for those opportunities, who take advantage of those vulnerabilities, particularly young males who do that. And I'm a big proponent for the fact that these issues are so much a community issue, and that men...
I was just going to get to that.
that men have such a role in this movement. All the good guys. There's so many more good guys than there are out there that are perpetrators, obviously, by far. And we need the guys who are the good guys to stand up and start becoming involved in this movement and start to mentor other young men and let them know what it's really like to be, what it means to be a real man, that it doesn't mean to be abusive or to be sexually abusive towards a partner in any way, that's not acceptable behavior. And so we need more male voices out there in getting involved in these issues. I really encourage men to volunteer for our organization.
Mentoring, Big
mentoring,
Brother, Big Sisters, those kinds of things.
exactly, but also on our hotline. It's very important for the victims who call our hotline to get a positive male voice on the other end of that phone. I have a number of male volunteers who staff our hotline who do an excellent job. So I really feel that if we could somehow get a way of looking at this as a women's issue and looking at more of a community issue, and that we're working at it together.
I've often thought, and I've seen this mentioned, heard this mentioned, and seen it in television scenarios, the old no means no. And you got to stick to that one because there's really no wiggle room. Now, granted, there are cases where no maybe doesn't mean no, but one has to operate under the assumption, and I think it's up to men, fathers, fraternity brothers, those kinds of things, to really reinforce that, you know, you're never really going to regret. You may think you're going to regret, but you're never really going to regret listening to the word no and taking it.
Exactly.
I mean, that always will be there. Coulda, woulda, shoulda. That, you know, that we. But I mean, in terms of
the myth that there are rapists who misunderstand. That is very much a myth. People who sexually assault individuals, they know what they're doing. They have the intention of having consensual sex. If that's not going to happen, then they're going to do what they need in order to accomplish that goal. They're not going to respect that person's boundaries. And so I just lost my thought.
well, we just have to stick to no. I mean, no has to. We're in a world so much that when a parent says no anymore, it doesn't necessarily mean no. And as a young child, we try to work around that no any way we can. And wouldn't we think it would be nice if all the kids did believe it when we said no? But the point is that there's got to be, this situation has to be, all the adults and cohorts, the buddies. And then we are having a more aggressive female population, not to take anything away from, but I know young men that feel a little terrorized. It's in the minority by women that are sexually aggressive. Now, I'm not saying there's women rapists. I don't know anything about the statistics but it used to be the totally helpless female and the dominant male, and they were going to take advantage all the time. And that, we can go into all kinds of studies or not, but our young women are getting aggressive, assertive in life, and somewhat more aggressive on the playground. And so sometimes it's hard to believe they would mean no because they came on strong. And also it might be hard for a young man to say no.
It could be, definitely.
I know that would be a rarity, but women can't just assume that they have to respect no on all sides.
We have a lot of stereotypes that not only affect women but also men. This idea that what it means to be a man, and for some males they feel the need to at least give the illusion that they're sexually active even if they don't want to be sexually active. And so that definitely can happen. What I really advocate is that we need to have respect for everyone's personal boundaries. It is about respect. It's about listening to someone who, and communicating. I mean, sex is such a big decision, but it's something that we tend to not want to talk about before it happens. And so communication is a big piece, respecting someone else's boundaries. Someone who sexually assaults someone is not respecting someone's boundaries, and just not physical boundaries, but also their emotional boundaries. They're not listening to their values. So they don't care about how that person feels. So for the vast majority of males and females who are interacting together, I think that there is a caring there of feelings, but there needs to be that communication there and just that utmost respect.
We have seen situations in Omaha as in the past year where we had what we considered a serial rapist. That is you talked about young men that just don't care, or at some point do not care about women, and may do something they shouldn't do. But when we talk about a serial rapist, what are we talking about? And how do you, unless he has been convicted, what are we talking about in terms of, again, being totally aware and watching everybody around us? Is that the only way to defend yourself from a serial rapist?
Well, protecting yourself from a stranger rapist, there are different things as opposed to
he was breaking into houses.
Breaking into houses, yeah. And he was, I believe, there was belief that he was stalking them for a period of time and watching them. Obviously, we need to be aware of our surroundings and practice some safe, primary safety guards about, walking out to our cars and keeping our doors locked and our windows locked and stuff like that to help protect ourselves from those individuals. Again, that's like less than 15% of all sexual assaults are committed by someone who would be considered a stranger rapist, or someone who's not known to the victim. But we as a society tend to be more fearful of those types of crimes because it gets a lot of attention. It's when it does happen, it's like it does really hit us.
And those people are intent upon doing this, as opposed to taking advantage of a situation that just happens to come up,
well,
I mean, there's something in their psyche, their psychology that this is not just some passing fancy.
But people who offend acquaintances also plan what they're going to do. They also have intentions, and they also it's not something that they just happen to stumble across.
They're looking for a good time.
They're looking
at
for
any cost.
At any cost, yeah.
In the common parlance.
Which means that they have the same intentions of victimizing someone, even though they may not define themselves as victimizing somebody.
Never quite thought of that, but that's probably true. I want to talk about there are some other demographics that we need to be concerned about, and we want all our women to be safe. But there are our elders. Believe it or not, there are people out there that rape elderly, and we really need to protect them and keep an eye out for them. And I don't know, what are some of the things that are happening in that area?
Well, there's a lot of attention being given to vulnerable adults, particularly elderly, who are victimized not only by sexual abuse but also domestic violence. We're recognizing that population is vulnerable primarily because of the age issue, a lot of disability issues that makes someone more vulnerable. The key to a lot of these issues in terms of someone being victimized is their level of vulnerability. And so when someone's aged, that increases their vulnerability. And so there has been a lot of attention given to kind of bringing this crime out of the shadows, because it's very easy for the elderly not to get the attention that they need. A lot of the times, the question of whether or not they've been sexually assaulted may not even be asked of someone who's elderly. We might forget that they might be being abused by an intimate partner, someone that they've been with for 30 years, and they haven't wanted to reach out and get help. So they're more isolated, and there needs to be a lot more attention given and a lot more outreach done to that particular population.
One other one, you mentioned disabilities. Those who, they don't necessarily have to be old, but those who are disabled are often seen as an easy target.
Yes.
And let's say there's mental retardation involved, that they won't be believed, or they won't be able to communicate, or maybe they're deaf, or something that because they won't be able to tell all, say all, be understood,
That's
and
exactly
they become a real target.
Most definitely. Any vulnerability, and just you and me, Carol, I mean, regardless of whether we have physical or mental disabilities, every one of us has some vulnerability in us. And what criminals are good at, regardless of what the crime is that they're really good at taking advantage of that vulnerability. And so obviously with someone with a disability or who's elderly, that's just another layer, and that increases their vulnerability.
You mentioned that you were really concerned that we can consider all of this sexual offenses, sexual taking advantage of a community situation, and you mentioned, male role models. What we have a couple of minutes left. What are some of the other areas where the YWCA, which has been a leader in this in Nebraska, things that they're doing to involve the committee to take ownership of personal responsibility and for say young men or whatever, and make what a real man and a real woman is?
Okay. Well, what we really attempt to do with our programs is we try to empower our clients who come to us who are seeking services. We're not there to save someone or tell someone what they need to do. We're there to offer them options and to kind of be there as a support for them to take the steps themselves. The piece that we're doing with education is we're not only, I think prevention is the key to a lot of these issues.
But everything can't be prevented.
Not everything can be prevented. But I think a lot of attention needs to be given particularly to gender-specific education, where you have males talking to males, females talking to males about these issues. Research has shown that if males and females are grouped together, that these type of programs tend to not be as effective, because males will not speak as openly, females will not speak as openly. And they also need to hear the message. Me going in and talking to a group of men, it's going to be perceived completely different than if the same message is coming from a man.
I think we can end on that. That
Yes.
we do need to have the young men, the young women, even the older ones,
Yes.
get with their own, because they're more open and understanding.
Most
Thank
definitely.
you so much. I
Thanks.
want to thank Pamela McCarthy from the Omaha YWCA. And remember, it is Domestic Violence Awareness Month, so let's try to be more aware. Thanks for joining
Consider
us.
This is an issues and information program produced by UNO Television. More information and program archives can be found at unotv.unomaha.edu. If you'd like to share your comments about this show, call UNO TV at 402-554-2516 during regular business hours.
The 9th season of Consider This is brought to you in part by From the Top, a national program showcasing the musical talents of young people. From the Top can be heard on KVNO Classical 90.7 each Sunday at 5 p.m.